Closing the Gap, 50 Years Seeking Equal Pay is made possible by the Eden Hall Foundation seeks to improve the quality of life in Pittsburgh and southwestern Pennsylvania. Through the lens of women's issues, it continues the stewardship of Sebastian Mueller in the areas of human services, health, education, and the arts. And by Chatham University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania has empowered women for 145 years, advancing women's causes with their Centers for Women in Politics, Entrepreneurship, and the new Chatham University Women's Institute opening in 2015. And these additional donors: Kathy Raphael, Buchanan Ingersoll and Rooney, PC, Georgia Berner, MSA, and the Women and Girls Foundation.
Hello and welcome to this Closing the Gap special presentation. I'm your host, Lisa Washington. Today we're talking about your personal board of directors, cultivating mentors and sponsors at work. We'll tell you how to surround yourself with people who will enrich your life and inspire your career. Our goal is to help you break down the barriers and break through the glass ceiling that contributes to the gender pay gap. We want you to be part of this conversation too, so send us your questions and your comments. Our social media team is standing by and they'll get your questions to our panel of experts here in the studio. I am so happy to welcome our first guests. Maggie Jensen is the CEO of the YWCA of Greater Pittsburgh, and Melanie Harrington is the CEO of Vibrant Pittsburgh. Thank you, ladies, so much for being with us this afternoon. You are both CEOs of thriving organizations. Before we tell women that they need to create their personal board of directors, why don't you both explain what a board of directors is and how they inspire and inform you as you lead your organizations?
Well, a board of directors for an organization itself consists of people who are committed to its success and from a variety of sectors. They care about it. And I think a personal board of directors that one would seek would be the same, to fill it with people who have expertise and who care about the outcome of your career.
So Melanie, essentially, if a woman creates a personal board of directors, it's as if she's the CEO of her life.
Exactly. And as the CEO, you want to have people that are willing to invest in you, as Maggie said, invest in your success, so they see you as untapped potential, an undervalued stock with long-term dividends that are going to be a return for them as well. And so these are the people that can hold up a mirror to you so that you can see how something you did, something you said might look. They are advisors to you. They help you stretch in different directions so they don't leave you only in a comfortable situation, but in a growth kind of situation. And they come sometimes from different perspectives and different backgrounds and different sectors. And those are the people that make up the composite of your board of directors.
I want to share something with you and then get you to expound upon it. There have been articles about creating a personal board of directors that have appeared in Forbes magazine, the Harvard Business Review, even the New York Times. And the concept says that instead of relying on a single mentor, we should surround ourselves with a team of diverse people who offer unique talents and connections. Maggie, how do those diverse relationships help women close the gender pay gap?
We're talking about each of us trying to close our own individual pay gaps. And when you think about it, there are so many aspects that contribute to it. We may need advice regarding whether to take a job or not. We may need advice regarding where to find a job. Or when you have it, should I go in this direction or not? One of the things that I find often I'm asked about is how do you balance your work and your personal life? That is something that is really of concern to young women. But also how to negotiate that salary. Also how to plan for the future. And are there other sorts of paths I should take? I think there is many possibilities for mentors and for advice as there are aspects to a job.
And certainly those are all factors that determine how much a woman will earn over a lifetime of her career. The Harvard Business Review has a study that found employees who are mentored tend to make more money than those who are not. Melanie, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I had a mentor that once told me that, Melanie, it's rare that anybody achieves his or her accomplishment without some sort of mentorship, guidance, sponsorship. Serendipity just doesn't happen, in one's career. So, but there's a two-for thing that happens. You have to ask also for the help, the advice, in addition to somebody willing to shed some light on clue you in on what's going on. One of the things that I find most valuable about mentoring is it sort of takes the cover off of those things that are not transparent. So, what other people are making, how to make the climb, how to make the ask, who to talk to, who I need to develop a relationship with, and that mentor circle can clue you in, and that's really important.
Let's talk about Vibrant Pittsburgh for just a moment.
Yes.
You guys want to embrace inclusion and attract and elevate a diverse group. How does that affect an entire city?
So, if you don't have, and if you aren't a city that is able to attract and retain a diversity of talent, then you won't be a growing region. Not in the changing demographic trends of the United States. The only reason the United States had a growth in its population is a result of the growth of diversity of that population. So in order for the Pittsburgh region to be a viable, vibrant region, it also has to be able to create that diversity and attract that diversity. And one of the ways that you have a growing diverse population is if that population is able to build its social capital, become anchored in a community. And part of that is creating that network, having those strong networks that are going to get you in touch with the things that you need in order to be successful, to thrive in a community. And so we work on a combination of things relative to creating all of those embedding factors for people of all backgrounds, and that's the key. What are the things for people from all backgrounds? And
certainly that would be true for any city looking to increase its amount of inclusion and diversity to, again, help the entire city.
Definitely.
Maggie, let me ask you, it's great when we surround ourselves with people who will praise us and always say yes. Talk about the importance of having someone who will challenge the status quo, someone who will offer constructive criticism, which can sometimes be difficult to handle, but it's important to have.
I think sometimes constructive criticism is the best advice because sometimes we don't always take into consideration all of the issues. When I came to the job that I have right now, I said to my staff, my immediate staff members, this is how I'd like you to work with me. Tell me what you really think. Don't tell me what you think I think, because that doesn't help me. Maybe I haven't considered something that you have, and you might just change my mind. So the point being, someone who's willing to tell you what they think is a weakness or something that you can improve on is actually really helpful.
So let's again talk about, as women are building their personal board of directors, the difference in a mentor and a sponsor. We hear a lot about mentors, not as much about sponsors. Can you explain the difference between having a mentor and a sponsor?
A mentor describes a personal relationship, and the mentor is working with the other person to provide advice, to teach. I think maybe coach is maybe the best term. But a sponsor is someone who speaks for you to others. So it might be in an organization that they are pulling for you to get the next job. It might be for someone who is advocating for you to come into the organization. When you ask for references, you really are asking for sponsorship. So a mentor is a personal one-to-one relationship, but a sponsor really is an advocate who is speaking to others on your behalf.
Great advice. Thanks so much. We have some questions from some ladies on the street, so let's listen into one of their questions.
I was curious if you would think it would be better to have a female or a male mentor, especially in the business world.
Great question. We're talking about mentors. We're talking about increasing or getting rid of the pay gap, but is it important that you have to have a female mentor or sponsor?
I would say it depends on the situation. A lot of times, because there are more men in positions of power, sometimes it's important to seek the best mentor available. And there are a lot of men who have daughters and who want to see women succeed. So I think the answer is to pick the best individual with the best skills who's approachable despite their gender.
Let's get you to weigh in as well,
Yeah,
Melanie.
and I think, you have to think about mentors in the plural. So you do want more than one. And you also want a diversity of mentors, because that diversity will allow you to grow and stretch and clue you into different things. So I would suggest that you have different mentors to meet the different needs and different situations. So that would likely include both men and women. People of different racial and ethnic backgrounds, of different sectors and disciplines and things like that. So you think about, what is the thing that I am trying to achieve, the question that I'm trying to answer, the person, the sponsor I'm trying to get to and develop a relationship with. And those are the type of mentors that you reach out to, and the board of directors that you build.
Okay.
Now, I would say if I was asking about work-life balance, I would want to talk to a female mentor in that
Okay.
regard.
Absolutely. Let's get another question from one of the women on the streets.
So I am in like a scientific field and it's male dominated. So my question is how to stand out in a positive way in a male dominated workforce.
I'll
Yes.
take that question
Okay.
because my previous career was one that was dominated by males. And I think the first thing is to demonstrate your skills and show that you add value to the situation. Because once that happens, then those around you see you in a different light. It is more difficult for women. I think that it is, in a situation like that, it is still true that you have to be better to be noticed. And so establish yourself, don't hang back. And I think once they find that you have skills, that will help move and remove some of the male dominance.
The other thing I'd like to add is confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you're not sure you really are confident, or you're just feeling, if you portray a degree of confidence, sometimes the real internal confidence will follow. But that confidence, portraying that confidence to your male counterparts, really sort of helps create a balance in that work environment. And I've heard that repeated over and over again. And when I've worked in male-dominated situations, I know if I come with a degree of confidence, it really helps to equalize the playing field a little bit.
I'm glad you brought up that word confidence. Maggie, let me ask you, as the CEO of the YWCA, you serve women who come from different, sometimes challenging backgrounds. What do these women need, and who do they need both personally and professionally as they develop a board of directors?
Okay. At the YWCA, we have about 160 employees, and some of those employees are entry level. And what I mean by that is not only entry level to our agency, but the first job that they've ever had. And so one of the things that we do with our supervisors is they are experienced in providing some advice that maybe normally they wouldn't. Things about how do you conduct yourself in the workplace, what is professional decorum, how do you dress. We also, though, can make referrals to some organizations that actually work on this. We have a partnership with PA Women Work, and for those folks who are seeking a job and really need some assistance, we'll make that referral, and they spend time on resume building, also on interviewing, appropriate dress, etc.
I'll get you to add in as well, Melanie. With Vibrant Pittsburgh, we're talking about people from different cities who have come to the area, some who are natives, and there is sometimes a period of adjustment. How do you deal with that, and both personally and professionally creating a board of directors?
So one of the things that we also talk about is that your peers can become your board of directors as well. They can become your mentors, your network, because they say, one of the academics here in Pittsburgh, she says that peers rise together. And so if you begin with the network that you have, and then from there you can grow a network, add people to the network. But that peer network can also help to provide you some insights, introduce you to new things, help you think through some decisions and steps and jobs that you're seeking. So I think that can be an invaluable first step of start for a number of people.
Great conversation, ladies. Thank you so much. We have so much more to talk about. And coming up, we'll meet a woman who has been guiding her career with the help of a personal board of directors. But up first, what's the best career advice you ever received? We took our cameras to the streets and asked women that same question. Here's what they had to say.
The best advice I've ever been given is to not be afraid to be clear about what you want from a business or a workplace and to not settle for anything less than that.
The best advice someone gave me is to be confident in yourself and your abilities and to know where to find answers if you don't know them and be confident enough to not know things.
Don't be threatened when you're in male-dominated places. Recognize when you're in male-dominated places, but try not to let it faze you.
I work as a photographer now, and I was told once that when I'm going to events and when I'm going on shoots, while there are other professionals there, that they are not any more important to me than me. They do not know any more than me, and that I should just assert myself and do my job because I am skilled and I am doing what I'm there to do.
Yes, I have a mentor in my research laboratory, and he's really helped me figure out what I want to do with my life and how to be successful as a young scientist.
My mom just has always really told me to be my own person and be independent and not depend on anyone else for my success. And I think that's helped because sometimes I may be a little too independent, but it really motivates me to make sure I can take care of everything for myself and not rely on other people.
I think women still get underpaid for doing the same job as a male, and I see that in my own family, so it's really important to keep fighting and keep doing all we can do to improve the wage gap.
I think young women today are very strong, and I think they just need to see themselves as equal to men and equally capable of doing the job and make sure that they don't just sit back but be very involved at every level of their career.
I think the best advice is that someone has told me was that success is not a straight path. It's like kind of cricket, and as long as you keep going and don't give up, then you end up making it either way to success.
We're talking about how to create your own personal board of directors. And right now, I am very happy to welcome Atiya Abdul-Malik. Atiya, thanks so much for being here. Now, we invited you here because we want you to share your personal story about creating your own personal board of directors and how this has helped you both in your professional life and in your personal life.
Yeah, so I look at my personal board of directors, or what I call my mentor circle, and they have helped me through all facets of my life. My career as a nurse has evolved. I have gone from positions that I had no experience in, and I think that's mainly due to the diversity of my mentor circle, but also the sponsorship within the organizations that I've worked in.
And your path was not a conventional path. Explain to us how you got there and how the mentors and sponsors were so instrumental in that.
One thing that I really focused on is that I'm ultimately the leader, right? So I'm driving my career, I'm showing initiative. So what mentors and sponsors are also looking for is this where I want to invest my time and energy? What am I going to get out of this? Am I going to see the fruit of this person's investment in their own career? And so I knew early on that in my nursing career that I would not remain in the clinical setting. So how was I going to navigate out of that clinical setting? I needed to meet people who were outside of the setting. I needed to look at other organizations, professional opportunities, as well as other mentors to help guide me. And so I leveraged those relationships and I cultivated those relationships. And each relationship took me further and further to what I believe is my true purpose.
I want you to talk about your job now and how you got there, but also you faced some obstacles. It wasn't always easy for you. So can you share that with us?
Yes. I was a teenage mom. And there were individuals, I would call them tour mentors, who basically spoke death into that. You're not going to succeed. This is impossible. Why are you trying so hard? But I then had the other side. I had the positive side, saying that Atiya, anything's possible, and that you've taken a detour, but you can still get to that destination. So I think the true driver was my resilience, my own character, and the fact that I believed in myself. But I also hung on to the encouragement from others that is not the end. So my children have watched me attain multiple degrees. They watch me go through multiple career transitions and promotions. But I could not have done that without the supportive network, but more importantly, without that inner drive that I had to succeed no matter what.
Talk to us about your position today. Share with our audience what you're doing.
So I have the greatest pleasure of serving the community. So within my organization, I'm responsible for corporate citizenship initiatives. So I always describe it as I'm the heart. My team, we do things for the people. So we work with nonprofit partnerships. I assist executives on getting placed on boards. I also oversee employee volunteerism for the organizations and other community health partnerships. So it's a lot about giving back to the community.
You seem to have a lot of confidence, which is wonderful. But can you speak to people who sometimes have insecurities and doubts and maybe not always as strong of a will to succeed?
Well, you can imagine having my background, it was very challenging at first. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the highest self-worth, and I had to work on that. So what I always tell someone is, one, you work on those things that are going to build your resilience. You stop attending the party of no's, right? We already know that the world is coming against you. They don't need another party goer. So you have to be the one that's going to give yourself that positive self-talk. You have to be the one to encourage yourself. You have to speak life into your own existence. So it's something that you can cultivate within yourself. You also have to be mindful of who your circle is. What is that circle depositing into me? Are they uplifting? Are they encouraging me? You cannot allow any labels or any statistics to put you in a box to determine your future. Ultimately, you take that control. So it's an exercise. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. But if you keep taking those steps, you'll build the confidence. And it's not cockiness, but it's the confidence that you are putting out into the world that I'm worthy. I've already been validated. I'm enough. So that's what I encourage others to do, that you start doing that inner work to build yourself up. I have a great deal of faith, and I make sure that whatever I'm in, whether it's my personal or professional life, that the energy that's coming into my life is going to build me up. And the energy that's not, I need to be involved in that less.
I want you to talk about those steps, about how you are able to approach people. You have the confidence, you know that you are enough, but you know what you wanted, and you decided, here's a path I need to get there. How did you take that first step to approaching people? That can sometimes be hard to do.
Yes, it's very intimidating. So I have certain rules with my engagement. There is my chief medical officer, who was my sponsor, gave me a very challenging assignment. And it was very intimidating. I remember going to getting a fortune cookie, and it said, act as if it were impossible to fail. So I keep that in mind, and I look at each engagement. If I am only going to meet you one time, but there is something that I see in you, something that you can deposit into me, then I need to be ready with my elevator pitch. I need to be ready with what my goals are. I need to be able to tell you in a very succinct way, why is it that I'm approaching you, and asking whether or not you would be willing to spend a few minutes with me. So maximize the opportunities, especially with individuals that you may not see again. And in a setting where you're going to have time with this person, start to get to know them. Maybe it's sitting at a table at an event. Maybe it's, offering, can we have a cup of coffee? Sending them an email. Start beginning to cultivate the relationship. Because what I want people to understand, just because someone is in a position that you are looking at, or in a position of authority, they're making a certain salary, doesn't necessarily mean you want them to be on your personal board of directors. So I want people to be mindful. Don't allow position or salary or some other extrinsic factor, get you to think so quickly that they are supposed to be on your board of directors. So that mindfulness happens both ways. And don't deny what you can give back. So I always say, if you're asking something from someone, be ready to offer something. can I work on a project? If you're willing to give me 10 minutes of your time, is there something, here are my skills, can I assist you with?
I want to bring in our other panelists. Atia's makes some wonderful points about that. When you're searching for a mentor or a sponsor, how important is it for you to get information for them, to learn from them, but also to show your skills and your assets and what you can do?
One of the things I hear mentors talk about often is the quality of the mentee in the mentor-mentee relationship. And I think what they mean is, if I am, to what Atia is saying, if I'm willing to spend some time with you, is it going to be a waste of my time? And so that means when you're a mentee, you have to drive the relationship. You have to know what you want. You have to work on the assignments, you know, and usually it's not that formal, but you have to be ready to deliver. And you have to be ready to give something back to the relationship. And that can be in a lot of different ways, but sometimes it is an acknowledgement and an appreciation of the insight, the advice, the time that people are spending with you. But you do want to really think about, what does it mean to be a good mentee in that mentor-mentee relationship?
And Maggie, let me ask you, you know, you ladies are all sitting here, you're very successful, both of you are CEOs, you're well accomplished in your career, but you weren't always a CEO. You had a different career path that landed you to where you are now. Talk about that a little bit.
I think that my approach to a personal board of directors is a little more informal, because as I have moved through my career, I would seek advice from someone, and it would depend on what I may be doing. So if I'm brand new to the organization, I might seek out someone who can help me with the technical aspects and tell them I would really appreciate your assistance because I want to do a good job. And you see whether that grows or not. But a lot of folks that I have met and I've networked with are in the background. And every once in a while, something will come along that I think they can help me with. And I may reach out to them and actually ask for advice. I've been in my career now here 8 years, and I was thinking about the fact that when I interviewed for the job, and this is in a nonprofit, I didn't have nonprofit experience, and I knew that raising money was a big issue. And I thought to myself, you know, why would they be interested in me? They've offered me an interview. But who can I talk to about this? And I was on an advisory committee, and one of the members was an executive coach. And I talked to him and I said, may I ask you a question? And I laid out the facts, and he said, well, you know, I'd never hire anybody who didn't have fundraising experience in that job. And I sort of fell, and you know, in my heart. And then he said, you know, but you need to emphasize networking because it's very connected to networking. So in the interview, when I talked about my experience, I said, I don't have fundraising experience, but I'm a good networker, and let me tell you about that. I consider him having mentored me in sort of a one-off.
And he didn't even know.
No.
Great story. Thanks so much for sharing it. Let's go to social media now and check one of our questions from social media.
This question was submitted by Carly on Facebook. When starting a new job, what is the best way to approach someone you admire and ask them to be your mentor?
Atia, why don't we start with you? You started a new job, you're a little nervous. How do you approach someone who you think could possibly be a mentor for you?
I think working on, you know, what that speech is. How are you going to approach them? Why do you want to approach them? Who is that person? So identifying the right person and for the right reasons. The worst thing you can do is approach someone and you're not able to articulate the why. So you need to do some prep work before you go out there and make the ask for an informal or formal mentorship. And I wouldn't start off by that. I would start off by, can I take you out for a cup of coffee or tea or lunch? Again, get to know that person, because mentorship, there is a time investment. There's an energy investment. Not everybody you approach is going to have the time or energy, or may not even be the right fit for your mentor circle. So just be prepared, think about your approach, and then move forward from there.
Great. Let's take another question from social media.
This question was submitted by Carly on Facebook. She asks, when finding a mentor and trying to establish a comfort level with them, I would like to avoid anything unprofessional. What are some of the most common mistakes mentees can make?
Melanie, let me ask you that. We heard Atia talk about seek the person out, get to know the person, find out if this is a fit for you. What do you want to avoid so it's not awkward or uncomfortable?
So make sure you do follow through. If you set up a regular meeting time, you come on time. If you were saying you were going to do something, an assignment, read something, meet with somebody, then you do it. And if you haven't done it, you really need to come back prepared to discuss, what you thought of in the alternative, what barrier or issue caused you not to do it. In other words, you want to come back prepared. The other thing that Atia said that is so important is really establishing a relationship first with the people that you include in your circle. So take the time to get to know somebody. And in the beginning of that mentor-mentee relationship, you're putting together some kind of guidelines. You don't need to be that formal about the whole thing, but because sometimes Maggie is right. You may not realize you're in a mentor-mentee relationship until after you started the conversation and you've had some interaction. But I think you do want to make sure that you are following through. What a mentor really likes is to know that their time, their investment has been utilized, has been worth it, is appreciated, is acknowledged, and that they see that there's some progress that you're making. That really is fulfilling for a mentor and causes them to make the additional investment.
Can you add on to that, Maggie?
I was just going to add that I think my approach is to observe for a while. And you really want to see in an organization who really is really good at what they're doing. And when you do that, it also helps equip you when you approach them to say, you can say that I've noticed that you're someone who really knows what you're doing, and I wonder if you would spend some time with me and share some of that knowledge.
Great advice. Ladies, thank you so much. There's still so much more to talk about, and we will be taking your questions from social media too. But at first, the reason that we're telling you to find mentors and sponsors is so you can build a more satisfying and a better paying career. Right now, we want to tell you about all of the factors at the root of the gender pay gap. Take a look at this.
President John F. Kennedy signed the Equal Pay Act into law in 1963, guaranteeing equal pay for women and men doing the same work for the same employer. Have women seen progress since then? Sure. Has the progress come fast enough? You decide. The wage gap has improved at a rate of less than half a cent per year since 1963. At that rate, the gap won't close completely until the year 2053. That means today's 20-somethings will see equal pay just about the time they're ready to retire.
I don't see how that's right.
I just assumed basically most people were paid on an equal basis.
Women make up half the workforce, and 6 out of every 10 American families rely on women's paychecks to make ends meet.
My daughter, she's a breadwinner. She works hard for her money.
Right now, my wife makes more than me.
Yet, U.S. Census Bureau statistics show there is no industry in America where women earn more than men.
For most women, they are in the workplace because they need to be working and they need the economic security.
Deborah Brake specializes in employment discrimination law and gender law, and she testified twice in Congress in support of fair pay legislation. It's a highly politicized and hotly debated topic.
Democrats want you to believe that Republicans do not support women.
So far, Republicans in Congress have been gumming up the works.
Much of the argument comes back to that underlying question of how much of this gap is explained by discrimination and how much is explained by neutral factors like choice of a field or attachment to the labor market. Of course, there is a lot of fighting over the numbers, and different studies show quite different percentages.
This statistic is the lightning rod for a lot of the argument.
Today, the average full-time working woman earns just 77 cents for every dollar a man earns.
It's a statistic that's easy to misinterpret and to manipulate.
I think, first of all, the 77 cents on the dollar is an important number because it's a benchmark across time compared to men. That becomes probably a soundbite that every reporter can grab and every story can focus on. After that, though, it's a lot more complicated.
Sabina Dietrich conducts research on economic and community development, and she studied the range of factors that contribute to the wage gap.
We looked at gender wage gaps by age groups, by industries, by occupations across metropolitan areas in the country, and found that the places that had the best wages were the faster growing metropolitan areas. Civil service matters. Unions matter. State legislation can matter if you've got living wage legislation. Those are all parts of the reason for the wage gap persisting.
So what happens when you control for the factors that affect pay? Multiple studies have shown that the wage gap narrows to 93 cents for every dollar earned by men. That leaves just a 7% gap, and that doesn't sound so bad, right?
I, for one, would not accept a 7% wage gap as parity. So a well-paid person earning, to keep it simple, $100,000 is facing a $7,000 gap a year. But in terms of the family that is struggling to make ends meet and pay the bills, a difference of $100 or $200 a month is going to be a very significant one.
It can really affect a family, their finances, and really how a family functions as a unit.
Kids aren't going to have the same kind of resources, the families aren't going to have the same kind of resources.
The big question that gets buried in the politicized fray is this: why? Why is the wage gap even wider for women of color? Why do so many women work in low-paying service jobs? Why do women with college degrees tend to pursue lower-paying occupations than men? Why do they tend to have shorter work histories than men? And why do women experience more career interruptions to care for family members? The answers reveal many gaps in many areas, and women feel the collective effect in their paychecks.
I think of it more as lost opportunity.
For doing the amount of work that you're doing, you're not going to be bringing home as much as you should be for them.
If we're going to value the work that people do, I mean, a lot of us are underpaid as it is.
What does the wage gap mean for the financial security of America's families and for the economic security of the country as a whole?
Families absolutely need women's income, which makes it an issue of family security as much as a women's issue.
It's a women's issue, it's a country's issue, it's a civil issue, it's an equality issue.
Did you know that the millennial generation is now the largest generation in history, even larger than the baby boomers? According to Levo.com, millennials will make up 75% of the workforce in the next 10 years. How will they handle this new phase of life, and who will they turn to for guidance? Our next guest has insights into those issues. She is Kim Small. She is the coordinator of residence life at Chatham University in Pittsburgh. Kim, thanks so much for joining us. Now, we understand that your university has two different types of mentoring programs. The first is WRAP, which stands for the World Readiness and Professionalism Mentorship Program. What does that offer your students?
So as a first-year student, you are able to connect with professionals that are alums of the institution or local professionals who are highly interested in helping our students to succeed, guiding them in their path for professionalism. And that not only concerns their career, but also how are you going to get involved on this campus and be an active member of the community. We have so many different WRAP mentors that work within the institution. I can say last week I had a WRAP mentor contact me because they wanted their first year student to be more involved and asked me about how can they be a resident assistant? How does that process work? Because being a resident assistant allows you to be more involved, meet more people, and of course make those networking connections that the WRAP mentorship program is really built on.
Great, and the second is the RISE program. Tell me about that.
The RISE program is a program for students of color at Chatham University. So this allows our students to have a mentor that is a highly engaged upper level student who is on our student activities board or in student government, a resident assistant, someone who has navigated and figured out how they can be successful in extracurriculars, academics, but also have a plan for their life once they walk across that stage.
So essentially this is like having a personal board of directors while you're in college.
Exactly. Exactly. Both programs speak to that because we realized at Chatham we don't want our students to just go to class or just go to those activities offered through student affairs and other departments. We want them to see the richness that the people who have left Chatham and are still at Chatham provide. And that could be a student, it could be a faculty member or an alum.
Do you find that the students gain more if they ask for help as opposed to trying to figure it out on their own, the importance of having a mentor?
Yes, we have accepted student stays at Chatham, and that is something that I always try to drive home with the students and their parents. There's no magical crystal ball that I can read and tell this student is going through something and I need to help them and narrow in on them. I love it when students come to my office and knock on the door and say, hey, Kim, I need some assistance with this, because that's what I'm here for. I'm in a helping field for a reason, because I love those moments where everything just clicks and the student realizes exactly what they need to do to be successful.
So I want you to talk more about that, about how you can help to develop a mentee as opposed to telling her just what she needs to do or what to do. How do you develop this person?
Well, at its core, it's figuring out what that person needs, because just being a mentor, like, that's a nice thing to put on your resume, but figuring out how can I help that person to reach their goal? What is your goal? And sometimes that comes into having some very honest and sometimes blunt conversations of, if this is the field that you want to go in, why don't your classes match that? If this is the field that you want to go in, I don't hear you talking about this as if you're excited about it. So taking a genuine interest in what that mentee wants to do. And as these wonderful ladies have already said, as a mentee, having that drive to push yourself.
Let's talk specifically about the millennials. This is a generation that's going to need some guidance. They've had helicopter parents who have allowed them not to fail. There is, some say, a sense of entitlement. Talk about how, because you're dealing with millennials and your programs and in mentorships.
And it's funny, I just had a conversation with one of my students today. She said, we may be millennials, but we are highly engaged. We want to see the world change. And I do agree with that, especially thinking of our Chatham students. And I think that our students at Chatham are millennials and are successful because they're highly engaged and they have realistic ideals about what that future is. And if they don't already, we help them achieve that. But you have to have realistic needs and expectations of your mentor. It's not about expecting your mentor to hold your hand and complete the task that needs to be done for you. It's about taking that criticism and having those conversations with them when you need help, rather than, well, that deadline kind of passed already, but how can you help me pick up the pieces? It's about figuring out what you want to do ahead of time.
I want to get your thoughts on finding mentors online. Millennials are wired in. There's a lot of information that exists on the internet. Would you say that it's a good thing to have an online mentor relationship, or is face-to-face better?
I don't think it's bad at all to have an online mentor, but in my personal experience, I've seen that I've worked best with a mentor when we can have that face-to-face conversation over a coffee or in their office, so that we can discuss exactly what needs to be done. I work best when I'm seeing their facial reactions to what I'm saying, and typing or maybe Skyping may work for some, but I've noticed that being able to engage with someone in person works best.
I'm seeing some nods and some, I'm not sure what these facial expressions are. Let's get our other panelists to weigh in on this. Ladies, what are your thoughts on having a mentor or someone online as opposed to, or maybe in addition to, one that you can see regularly in person?
Well, you know, so I think with this digital native millennial generation. I think that it's here to stay, and they're going to communicate and talk via all of these new social networking platforms. But I think that it should be complemented with that in-person mentoring experience. So not to say that not to do it, you know, because you can get a one-off, you can get an idea, you can get a piece of advice, you can get connected to something, you know, a link to something you should read, and an introduction via email or something like that. But I think you want to complement that with that in-person experience, because there is some kind of emotional intelligence and skill that you build in having that discourse and conversation with somebody who's trying to stretch you and grow you.
Okay, let's get a question from social media now.
This question comes from Aaron on Twitter. Are mentors and sponsors more helpful in certain fields?
Good question. It's a very diverse group we have here. What are your thoughts, ladies?
I would say that it's not. I don't think that the field matters, because we're really talking about a person's life, whether it's their, you know, their profession, their direction. I think all of us can benefit from mentors, people who can assist us. I really don't think it is isolated by profession.
Okay. Yeah. Let's get another question from one of the women on the street.
I know a lot of times it's kind of frowned upon for them to be dominant. So I guess for me going into the medical field, what would you recommend for how I should portray myself? Should I come across as dominant or like take the back seat for a little bit?
Good point, ladies. You're CEOs, you're leading organizations. How important is it for you to be dominant? Do you not show your, I don't want to say aggressiveness, but your leadership in a way that may be perceived as being dominant or too dominant? What are your thoughts on that, Maggie?
I think that you have to be yourself. I think that's really the bottom line and important. Sometimes I will take the temperature of the room at times and kind of look around a little bit and be strategic about it. But in the end, it's important to be yourself and to be able to speak whenever is necessary. If you're not true to yourself, then I think that you're doomed.
Okay. Let's get another question from social media.
This question was submitted by Lindsay on Facebook. What if a mentor gives you advice to do something that is very far out of your comfort zone? How do you know if you can trust them and their advice?
Tia, why don't you weigh in on that one? How do you know if you can trust when a mentor suggests something and you aren't so sure about it?
Well, that's the first thing. You know, I think you start with self. You know, why are they suggesting this? I always ask the question back. You know, you mentioned, you know, this is the advice you've given me. Can you tell me why? So try to understand where your mentor is coming from with that advice, because sometimes it's all about perspective. And we all have our individual perspective, so trying to get that understanding is very helpful. The other thing, I talked about owning. You are the leader, right? You're the CEO of your personal board of directors. So you have to filter all information from all sources. Some of the information is not going to be right. Some of the information, especially if you have this circle of mentors, you may get different feedback on the same issue. So how do you kind of take all the feedback and then decide what's best for me? You are making a choice that's going to ultimately impact you. So you have to own the feedback, understand where it's coming from, and ultimately try to make the best decision for yourself.
And I would add that you need to be honest with yourself, because sometimes we're uncomfortable because we're afraid. And if that's the situation, then maybe it's something I want to try, but I have to talk myself into it.
Right.
If I'm uncomfortable because at my core I think it's the wrong thing to do, well, that's a different matter.
Okay. Let's get another question from social media.
This question was submitted by Ashley on Facebook. I'm young, but I still like the idea of trying to become a mentor to someone else. What skills and experience do I need before I can be a good mentor to another person?
Thank you. Is there a certain age or experience level that you find necessary to be a mentor? Melanie, why don't you start?
So I have seen in elementary school children mentoring younger children. So I don't know. I think As a person that wants to be a mentor, I think you want to be careful. You know, you are giving advice to somebody that is generally looking up to you, and so you want to be honest about what you know and what you don't know. And even sharing what you don't know can be a learned lesson for the person that you're talking to, in the way you impart it and what you say you wish you did know. I think for a mentor, though, it is being a good practicing mentoring helps you to be a good mentee.
Okay.
And so I think the practice of it helps you to improve on it. And so I would just say step out there, even if you step out there with young people, with children first to get a start.
Let's bring Kim into this. Age and experience, you're with college students. What are your thoughts on a certain age or experience level for a mentor?
I definitely don't think that there is an age level where now I've reached the proper age to be a mentor. I think that definitely the experience helps, but realizing that this person is coming to me because they see something in me, something that I can provide them help with. First, taking a step back and realizing that you have something to offer this person. And then, as it was said before, being honest about the feedback that you can give them and what level of achievement that you have already achieved.
Okay. Let's get another question from social media.
This next question was submitted by Paul via Facebook. If you were just hired at a new company, how would you exactly find the right mentor fit for you? Do you look for someone who is similar or in their job and personality, or should you look for someone who is different so they can help you with new skills?
Thank you for that question. What do you do? Someone who's just like you or someone who's left field from you? What do you think, ladies?
I'd say yes and yes. You know, we talked about the board of directors, and so you're looking to create a variety of people in that circle who can both help you with the position that you're currently in or the one that you're pursuing, those technical skills, the environment, the culture that you need to figure out, but also for that next step that you're going to take to give you an outside perspective. So I would want both, I think.
Maggie, did you want to weigh in?
No, I agree with that. I think that, and it's also not necessarily a type of person. It might be a type of skill. It might be a knowledge base. I think what you're looking for, the type of person you're looking for, let me back up. It's not a type of person. It's someone who can offer the advice you're looking for.
Okay. We have about 2 minutes left, so I want to get final thoughts from each of you. The takeaway for those who are watching this evening about creating your personal board of directors. Why don't we start with you, Kim?
You need people who are going to be positive and give you good criticism and feedback for what you're looking for, but have those skills that you want to see in yourself.
Okay. Atia?
I think about a quote from Melinda Gates. People who invest in women invest in the people who will invest in everyone else. So I encourage anyone, whether it's a mentor-mentee relationship, to always think about how am I going to invest in others.
Okay. Maggie?
I'd just like to add a thought that a concept that I think about of the unaware mentor. There have been people that I have observed and learned something from, and I've incorporated that into the way my management style. An example, a judge who used to come into my office in Washington, and he would stop and talk to everyone. He was very esteemed, but he would talk to the receptionist, he would talk to managers, he would talk to the guy sweeping. And I thought to myself, that gentleman has a visible demonstration that he values everyone's contribution. I want to be like him. And I think of him as a mentor because I took that concept and I've tried to incorporate it within myself.
Okay. And Melanie?
And I want to speak to something that I just said. I think you really are able to think about building the power of your board of directors, your mentoring circle, when you step out and mentor others. It really does help inform for you the power and value of the mentee relationship. So I would encourage people to take that moment, that opportunity, that program, to have that experience of mentoring in order to see how valuable it could be to themselves.
Ladies, thank you so much. Very well said. We certainly appreciate your advice for those who will be watching. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. We hope that this Closing the Gap special presentation has inspired you to become the CEO of your life. So reach out and connect and collaborate for a more vibrant community and career. Now, we would love to hear your feedback about today's program, and we invite you to take a brief survey online at womenwagegap.org/survey. And remember that you can watch all of the programs in our Closing the Gap series on demand on our website. We hope that you will continue this conversation about closing the gender pay gap. Talk about it at work, in social media, in your community, and with your representatives in government. Together, we can speed up the process of closing the gap.
Closing the Gap, 50 Years Seeking Equal Pay is made possible by the Eden Hall Foundation seeks to improve the quality of life in Pittsburgh and southwestern Pennsylvania. Through the lens of women's issues, it continues the stewardship of Sebastian Mueller in the areas of human services, health, education, and the arts. And by Chatham University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania has empowered women for 145 years, advancing women's causes with their Centers for Women in Politics, Entrepreneurship, and the new Chatham University Women's Institute opening in 2015. And these additional donors: Kathy Raphael, Buchanan Ingersoll and Rooney, PC, Georgia Berner, MSA, and the Women and Girls Foundation.